Sara recently sold a company. She started this company 20-something years ago with an idea and $5,000 in savings. What would you say are some key components to long-term success?
And stay in the lane that you're best at. I made things fun. Like I would turn almost everything into a game.
If she's gonna do it, she never puts on like a sad face or whatever. She goes full send.
And when you make whatever you're doing bigger than about yourself, you will find courage you didn't know you had. You will stick with something longer than you would.
So anyway, we're joined to, I thought what we would do here is take about 20 or 30 minutes while we have Sara with us. You know, many of you guys know, or maybe not, but Sara recently sold a company, her company Spanx. I know you guys are familiar with that, which is based about 2 miles here in Atlanta. She started this company 20-something years ago with an idea and $5,000 in savings, and was able to build it and ultimately sold it 2 years ago to Blackstone, the majority of it. She's still the largest single shareholder, but she sold the majority interest to Blackstone about 2 years ago. And she built the company with no partners, no investors, and really honestly no advertising for the first, formal advertising probably for the first 10 or 15 years or so, just on hustle, word of mouth, storytelling, and all of her tricks, and tricks of the trade. And so now we're entering a new chapter. Before I ask Sara some of the questions that you guys provided, I'm just going to say, as someone that watched her journey for almost the last 20 years, this is what I think is the most incredible thing that is never shared in the media stuff, is the work-life balance Sara had throughout the whole journey was incredible. Like, she does carpool line, she makes breakfast, she's at all the sporting events, plans the vacations for the family, you know, doctor's appointments. Like, she had that whole side of going on too, when no one talked about that. It's always like, how'd you start it? How'd you do it? And that to me was the most incredible thing. And also was the sole owner of this company that had hundreds of employees, new products every quarter, retailers, you know, and a lot of weight on her shoulders, because it was kind of the face of female entrepreneurship. And this is my opinion. So outside of Oprah and a handful of others, there's not a lot of women. There's not a lot of people that could take $5,000 in savings and do what she did. How'd you do it? So I think it's just important for everyone to recognize that, you know, this wasn't like an Elon Musk, no disrespect to Elon Musk, sleeping in the office, you know, for 2 hours, waking up and doing it every day. This is someone that like has her high school friends, takes a trip every year with them, sees her mom, her dad came and visited. Like, there's a crazy balance going on too. And I think that is the magic of what she was able to do. All right, so these are a bunch of questions that you guys submitted, and then we can open it up or whatever. But so the first question is, we should stand and like do something. We all just saw it.
Pretty mellow.
They did everything.
You guys did a full sauna coma. Like, okay, let's like jump up and down. Some energy. Oh my gosh, it's the time of day.
So they had mentioned that you had obviously Sara had an interesting start to your career. And the question is, tell us how you went from wanting to go to law school to selling fax machines. This is what she did before she started Spanx.
So I grew up on a beach in Florida. I grew up on a sandbar, a 5-mile sandbar. I grew up on the south end of the sandbar, basically. And I grew up wanting to be a lawyer. My father was a trial attorney, and I used to watch him in court. He used to take me out of school when I was little and watch his closing arguments, which was really fun in the courtroom. And so that's what I debated all through high school. I debated all through college. I was going to be a lawyer.
How do you think that makes me feel?
I know, I kind of kept that behind until you proposed that I was a champion debater. Anyway, I wanted to be a lawyer, and I'm a terrible test taker. So I bombed the LSAT not once, but twice. And that rerouted my life. And at the time, and we all know this, when really things happen that feel like the worst thing ever are oftentimes life's way of nudging us and letting us know we're off course. And that's what happened to me. So I think if I hadn't failed the LSAT, Spanx would not exist. But at the time, if you asked me, I was crying in my pillow and like, what's going on? I can't believe I'm not a better test taker and can't get into law school. It was a very big deal for me. And my dad is here. He's visiting from out of town. He came in from Florida. So what's interesting about my dad, for the parents here, he raised two entrepreneurs. So
Sure.
I have a younger brother, and we are both entrepreneurs. We both invented something that didn't exist, created a category, and created businesses. And so, what were the parenting techniques and what happened in our childhood that maybe fostered that we would all want our children to also feel like they could be risk takers and all of that. But anyway, I wanted to be a lawyer and I failed the LSAT. So then I went to Disney World and I tried out to be Goofy. And you have to be 5'8" in order to be Goofy, and I'm only 5'6", so I was the perfect height of a chipmunk. And I worked at Disney World for 3 months, and I ended up putting people on rides at Epcot for 3 months, and then I sold fax machines door to door for 7 years. And I got kicked out of businesses weekly, daily, escorted out of buildings. And one day in particular was really bad, and I just had the worst day and week, and I pulled off the side of the road and distinctly remember saying, like, I'm in the wrong movie. Like, call the director, call the producer, cut, this is not my life. I'm changing the script. And I went home that night and I wrote in my journal, what the heck are you good at? And the only thing really in my positive column was sales. I knew I could sell. And then I asked myself some important questions, which I always think is really helpful for us in self-excavating where we want to be, where we should head, and what are our strengths. I asked myself, why do I like sales? I didn't just leave it there. And when I asked myself why, it was like, I really like giving something to someone that they didn't know they needed, or that improved their life, or made a difference for efficiency for them. And the minute I wrote that, I wrote in my journal, I want to invent something that I can sell to millions of people that will make them feel good. And I had no idea what it was going to be. I just wrote it in my journal. And then I asked the universe for the idea. I said, give me the idea and I won't squander it. And it was 2 years later that I cut the feet out of control top pantyhose to solve a homegrown problem that women had, which was, what do I wear under these white pants? And because I had set that intention 2 years prior, I just was ready to give it a shot. There were a lot of women that were doing that homemade solution and cutting the feet out of pantyhose and trying to figure out what they were going to wear under their white pants too. But I think when people say, why was it you? Like, why did you create the $1 billion business out of it and not all those other women that were doing it? I think one of the reasons is I had set the intention prior. And so I didn't know if it was my idea. It's just, it's like that book, Are You My Mother? That children's book. It was like, are you my idea that I asked for? I don't know. So I went every day and started pursuing it. And I worked at night and on the weekends for 2 years trying to get the product made while still selling fax machines because I didn't want to quit my job and have no income and no health care. And so that's how the Spanx was born.
So just to give a little background on this, you had no business experience, right?
No business. I'd never taken a business course. Still to this day, I've never taken accounting. I've never taken anything like that. I had $5,000 that I felt comfortable to spend on this idea, set aside in my savings. And I, just like so many great ideas and inventions, they're homemade solutions to problems. Like, you could probably have $1 million, $1 billion idea once a year when you're thinking about how to fix something in your own life that doesn't feel quite right. I'm just always looking for that and asking why. Like, I love to sort of think about, like, why were shoes made the way that they're made, and who was the first person who thought of the shoe, and why am I eating with a fork, and why does it have 4 prongs and not 3, and when was this created, and should it be iterated on? And some things have been iterated on and some things haven't. And I think what makes people entrepreneurs are 2 things. We either invent something that didn't already exist, or we take something that exists and we improve upon it, whether that's a service or a product, and we make it exponentially better for the consumer. And I have sort of this whole innovation formula in my mind of like, I'll have ideas, but if I don't think it's exponentially, like I almost would say 10x better than what's already out there, then I might not want to pursue it. But, you know, that's why we're all doing what we do. We think we can offer something better.
I have a question for me. Did you think it was going to work? Like, did you, like when it started out, you're like, this is going to be big?
I thought it was going to work because I wasn't going to give it another option.
Right.
I didn't know how big it was going to be, but I knew it was going to work because like not working wasn't an option.
And then was there a turning point once you put it out where you felt like, wow, this is really happening, or I'm really onto something? Or
Well, for 2 years while trying to get it made was when I got a lot of resistance. I don't get this idea. Who's going to buy it? This is really ugly. No one's going to wear it. So I got a lot of doubt then, and I would start and stop during the production part of it. But then once I got it made, very quickly I was chosen as Oprah's favorite product of the year, which as an entrepreneur with no money to advertise was a huge endorsement. And I named the company Spanx, which has now become part of pop culture vernacular. I mean, I've kind of named the category. It's like become the Kleenex of the category. Someone the other day said, I got my Spanx from Skims. And I was like, oh God. But anyway, you know, so I kind of became the category, but that all started with, you know, just betting on myself and not wanting to give up. So so when I was on Oprah, I was like, this is validation. It felt like how do you get better validation than Oprah? But the funny thing is I knew I was going to be on Oprah in college. So I visualized that so clearly, and I have these visualizations a lot where I manifest things in my life. I'm not sure if I'm psychic and predicting that it's going to happen or if I'm creating it. Do you guys have that happen where you just like see yourself in a scenario? And I think that's been part of what I've done throughout my whole journey is I will visualize myself in a situation, whether it's success or an outcome, so clearly that I think I just start subconsciously filling in the blanks. But I remember after I was so sure I was on Oprah, like I saw myself on stage in college. We were talking. I knew I was there. I didn't know what we were talking about. So I called the next 10 years of my life filling in the blanks. I was like, I cannot wait to find out what the heck I'm talking to Oprah about. Like, what is it? And so I think that's been a big part of my journey is visualizing and manifesting. I spend a lot of time daydreaming. I spend a lot of time letting my mind wander. I tell a lot of people, like, if you got out your calendar today and looked at the next 2 weeks or month, how much time do you have allocated to daydreaming? Where in your calendar do you think of nothing that's on your calendar? Because when you're daydreaming and you're letting your mind wander, that's where the magic really happens. And it's becoming harder and harder in everyday life to get that. We're distracted by everything now. I mean, we even have a device. It's like pinging us every 2 seconds. And it's really special and important for us to spend that time alone and figure out when that happens. For me, it happens in the car. So I ask you, like, where does it happen for you? I figured it out that it happened for me in the car. And so I now will allocate time for me to be in the car to daydream and to access that part of my brain. And I'm not talking about where in your schedule do you go through your checklist. Like some people go, oh, that happens when I run. I think about like all my meetings and what I need to do. I'm like, no. Like, where do you just let your mind have the luxury of just like, I just thought of a squirrel and then that was weird. And then I thought of the color blue and I'm not sure why. And does blue have anything to do with the squirrel? Like, it's just really important for us to have that space and time for ourselves. And I will say, as a mother, and as a parent, it became so hard for me to access that. Like, unbelievably hard. And I didn't realize how hard it was. And several years after becoming a mother, I had like a little mini breakdown and realized it then. Oh, okay, this is radically shifted in my life. I am not allocating this time for myself to like daydream and think and let my mind wander. It was really hard to access that part.
One of my biggest regrets is I don't journal. Like, I wish I had a journal in my 20s to look back on. I don't have any records other than my memories or whatever. Do you journal?
I do. I've had a notebook with me for the last 25 years. Now, a lot of times it's my phone, which I don't like as much. I jot an idea down. But every idea I have, I try to capture. So in the moment that you have an idea, no matter what it is, even if you're like, I don't even know what this is related to, capture it. Because I think ideas are gifts from the universe. And I think that they lead us to really cool things in our life. So I have had a notebook, yes, and I usually write down ideas, and I have a lot of them logged.
I'm really into the process. Like when I get around people that are really good at what they do, I'm very curious about their process. So for me, at Marquis Jet in my late 20s and 30s, we flew the who's who of pop culture, athletes, CEOs, entertainers, and when I had a minute, I would always ask them like, well, what time do you get up? When do you go to bed? You know, like I was very curious about their winning habits. So I thought maybe I could ask you I know your habits, but you could share some of your habits. Like I know that, you know, you do write down ideas and stuff and you have a big book, but like Sara created most of the products in the beginning of all of them, basically. And what was your process for innovation? Did you think, what would I want to wear? Did you think, you know, what does the market need?
I listened to customers. I put myself where customers were. I was lucky that I was a customer that I was inventing for. I think part of my competitive advantage was I was actually making the product for myself in an industry that had been making product for women and they weren't wearing it. And so I had this advantage there. But I spent time with the consumer. I made sure of that. I look through magazines for inspiration. I drive in my car and think. I spend time alone. I look in nature. I'm just sort of like absorbing a lot, I think. When I was 16 years old, I started listening to Wayne Dyer. Has anybody heard of Wayne? So I started listening to him so much and my dad was the one who introduced me to him. When I was 16 years old, my dad and mom separated. My dad left home and he handed me a cassette tape series called How to Be a No Limit Person by Dr. Wayne Dyer, who was a psychologist who was also a professor at a school and had spent years giving people counsel and decided to aggregate a lot of his observations and readings throughout history and really help teach mindset. And so I was 16. My friend had just been run over and killed by a car in front of me. My dad left home. My parents separated. And I had these cassette tapes. And I just remember thinking, I want to put them in. I was like hurting, which also I always say the tough times in our life are like where the growth happens and opportunities for hidden blessings. And those really dark times for me was a hidden blessing that I would actually listen to Wayne Dyer, which changed the trajectory of my life as a 16-year-old. Because I think most 16-year-olds that weren't hurting that bad may have chucked those in the bottom of their closet and been like, I don't need to listen to this middle-aged bald guy with the bushy mustache. But I was like, I put him in my boombox in the middle of my room and hit play and started to cry and thought, I've just spent 16 years in school being taught what to think, and no one has ever taught me how to think. And holy shit, I can teach myself how to think in a way that makes life better and propels me forward instead of holds me back. So I became a student of how to think then, and it wasn't taught in school. So I was listening to tapes anywhere and everywhere that I could outside of school and in my car a lot. My car was kind of my sanctuary to be listening to this. So much so that nobody wanted to be stuck in my car after a party at Clearwater High because they would be, you know, everyone else was listening to Bon Jovi and they'd get in my car and be like, what do you really want for your life? You know, where do you really want to end up? And all the guys at Clearwater High were like, what the hell? And so no one wanted to be stuck in my car.
By the way, when I met Sara at a Vegas in Vegas at a poker tournament, and she was a customer of mine at Marquis Jet, and we met in Las Vegas, and we went out. The first time I saw Sara, I saw a picture of Sara, and I asked the Georgia rep to invite her to come to this event that we were having in Las Vegas, and we went out to dinner, and we're sitting at the dinner table. And I'm talking to Sara, and she's not like even paying any attention to me. And I look over and I'm like, so rude. She had earplugs in her ears. And I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, She's got earplugs. It was loud in Vegas. She was wearing earplugs. And then at 9:30, she excused herself. She's like, I'll see you guys in the morning. I'm going to bed. And I'm like, what an interesting human. We're in Vegas. She's going to bed at 9:30.
I was tired. I was an entrepreneur. I was exhausted.
So you were talking about like, earlier about like not caring what people think. I'm like, she clearly doesn't care what people think. But
I was going to just finish saying no one wanted to be stuck in my car.
Right.
And then fast forward 10 or 15 years later, I end up on the cover of Forbes. And all my friends from Clearwater High texted me, and all they wrote was, damn, should have listened to that.
What in these moments where like things are really I'm not even talking about business, where I've seen you push through, like even in the sauna. Someone asked me today, is Sara good in this? She's better than any of my friends. She can like hang with anybody, cold and hot. What's going on in that head?
Yeah.
What is going on in that head?
I don't know if what's going on in my head. This is what's going on in my head in the sauna, but I always make it bigger than about myself. And when you make whatever you're doing bigger than about yourself, you will find courage you didn't know you had. You will stick with something longer than you would normally. You'll go through the ups and downs. And for me, I feel like what feels bigger than myself is women and the plight of women. And I feel like I came into this world like really wanting to elevate the feminine and support women, and that like anytime I do something, I will think like I'm doing this sort of on behalf of all the women right now who still on the planet don't have the opportunity to do this. I'm doing this with the mindset of my mom and my grandmothers and the women who came before me that didn't have the choice to do this. Like it just feels bigger than myself, and it gives me crazy stamina and courage. Now, what is that for you? It just is so helpful, because if it was just about me, I'd leave the sauna. I'd be like, I'm hot. Or, I'd stop the business. And the business wasn't really ever about me growing a business and starting a business. It was so much bigger for me in my heart about what I was doing. And it had a lot to do with what I could do for women in general. So purpose beyond like, I just want to be good at this, or I just want to make money. If the purpose feels bigger that you can tap into and connect to, you will be able to ride this much better. And you'll find courage. Like I'm in the Guinness Book of World Record for scaling the side of a hot air balloon at 10,000 feet in the air on a dangling rope ladder. I cry on Delta during takeoff. Like my dad can tell you, I've had this crazy fear of flying and heights my entire life. So the things that I've been able to even surprise myself to do have come from that deep tapping into that source.
We were in Africa just recently, and we were following the Great Migration, and Sara had organized a hot air balloon to go up in the air. And I was like, I also have that fear, not as intense, but I know how big her fear is. And they're blowing up these guys that are blowing up this hot air balloon. And I'm like, I'm not going on the hot air balloon.
He said it all the way while the thing's being blown up, and we're in the middle of the Serengeti. He kept going, I just want you to know I'm probably not getting on this.
Not doing it.
I'm like, I'll
Google hot air balloon over Serengeti and I'll watch the video.
Yeah, that's what he kept saying.
And I know that like how scared Sara is of like,
petrified.
She was petrified. She got right in there. And I'm like, and it was inspiring, because I'm like, if she's going on, and I know how scared she is.
Tepper was scared too, and she got on. Weren't you scared when the balloon was getting blown up? Yeah, the fire. Yeah. The fire was, she was just like, what's happening? But we all did it. But yeah, the pictures of Jesse are so funny. My dad saw the picture. I mean, everyone's smiling and the balloon's getting blown up, and Jesse is like this.
No, I'm on the ground. I was like,
you look so shell-shocked. Dad even texted me when he saw the photo album. He goes, is Jesse okay in this picture? He looks completely traumatized.
No, I wasn't okay.
But we did it, and so, yeah, that was a really special moment.
Stop setting up these adventures that, they're scary.
They're scary moments for sure.
Papa, when did you think, were there any signs of Sara early on that gave you an indication that, you know, I always say if you gave 8 billion people in the world $5,000 and go build a multi-billion-dollar business, like 6 could do it. I couldn't do it. I know that. She did it. And Ford, Sarah's brother, also had a great exit and a company that he started. I went to a sales meeting with him. He needed someone that he's like, I need you to come to a sales meeting with me because I was in New York, and like just nod. Like I was like, it was like Ocean's 12.
Be the nodder.
He needed like someone to be in there and be like, just agree with him. I'm like, I could do that. He was so good. He was so good in this meeting. I came back, I'm like, I couldn't believe how prepared this guy was. My brother-in-law. What was it? Was there anything that you saw early on, or anything that you think that you and Ellen did that, like, what happened in that house? What the hell happened in that house, man?
Well, you know, Sarah came out of the gate just the way she is now. I mean, when she was probably 5 years old, it was evident that she was going to be a leader because her playmates would come over to the house and Sarah would invent a game. And they all followed her around like she was the Pied Piper, and they'd do it. Funny thing, though, was sometimes she'd charge them $0.25 for the game, to play the game. And so at the end of the playtime, I'd have to go around and tell Sarah, I said, Sarah, give them all back the $0.25. But anyway, she was, and her brother, I think, learned a lot because he was 4 years younger, growing up under Sarah, and Sarah, you know, kind of told him what to do all the time and whatever. So, but I think that probably Sarah's alluded to it many times that I learned early, not early enough in my own life, to not be afraid of failure. And I mean, it came to me when I was a trial lawyer. You know, when you're successful, you know, when you win a case, you don't really know why. But when you lose a case, you say that I made this mistake. So you learn from that, and it helps you grow going forward. And so I wanted to implant that idea in my kids. So that's why they both grew up. You know, there's a great analogy that I've never thought of before. But to teach those of you who still have young children, make the analogy to pole vault. So a pole vaulter doesn't know their limits until they keep raising the bar, and then they knock the bar off 3 times in a row and say, okay, I can jump so high. It should be the same thing in everything we do in life. You don't know your own potential in anything you're doing, until you keep hitting the final wall, and then you know your boundary. But most of us go through life without ever testing the boundaries. So we don't know what we are capable of, whatever it's we're going to do. And so that, I think, was a lesson. I got it too late in life for it really to change my trajectory. But, you know, I gave it to my kids after I figured it out. And so it worked.
My dad would encourage my brother and me to fail, and we would come home from school, and if we didn't have something we'd failed at, he'd be disappointed. And so it flipped the whole script of most kids are so worried about like making their parents proud and not disappointing their parents. And so it was like, whoa, this is crazy. But what he was obviously doing was just redefining failure for us, and it became about not trying versus the outcome. And I remember even conversations at the dinner table, if we failed at something, which just meant the outcome we were hoping for didn't happen, right? He would say things like, well, what did you get out of it anyway? You know, you just can't, okay, you didn't become the cheerleader, but like what else happened? And he'd make us kind of excavate for like, there was a really something that happened because I made the decision to try that never would have happened. Regardless of like, I didn't make the team, which a lot of times is all you want to dwell on and all you want to think about is like, I failed. Like, you know, all my best friends made the team and I didn't make the team. And I'd say things like, well, I learned a new dance, or I met a new friend waiting in line to audition and I'm going to her house this weekend to play. And he's like, okay, cool. So by that, you making that decision to do something, you made a new friend. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Would you have made that new friend if you didn't do that? No, I don't know if I would have. Okay. So it's just shifting that like all the focus doesn't have to be on this pre-described outcome that we hope for. And I think that freed my brother and me up a lot to take a lot more risks. Like when your dad's high-fiving you because you suck at something, you know, you're kind of like, okay.
I'll tell you 2 stories about Sarah that I just thought of that like again, haven't really been shared, but I don't think anyone knows this other than Sarah and I, but I was running a race we lived in New York City, and I signed up for a 5 or 6 mile race around Central Park. And Sarah's like, I want to run it too. I'm like, you haven't ran ever. I've never seen you run ever. She's like, oh, I'll support you. I'll run it. I'm like, all right. So we go out. I go, I'll just meet you. I'm a faster runner. I'm a runner. Been running my whole life. I'll meet you at the finish line and I'll wait for you. So we go and they blow the thing and I run and I beat Sarah. I wasn't racing against her, but I'm waiting at the finish line. I'm thinking like, I got 20 minutes. I'm going to go, I'll get some waters or whatever. And like 30 seconds after I finish, I turn around to go to the concession stand and Sarah flies by me and finishes the race. And I was like, what just happened? But here's the lesson. If you're going to show up, and this is relevant to everybody here that went to the sauna today, first timers in the cold plunge, first timers in the steam, first timers in the sauna. If you're going to show up, the one thing that Sarah does is she shows up. If she's going to do it, she never puts on like a sad face or whatever. She goes full send. It's full send, everything. And you guys did that today. You came in, went in here, and that's a great way to go through life. To be a participant. What?
I forgot about that. I couldn't walk for like a week.
Yeah, no, I couldn't. I was like,
what is going on? I cannot sit down.
How do you create edge for your kids, for the next generation to come?
Tell me what you think.
I think that's a really good question, and my kids are so young that I don't know if we're gonna do that right. I hope that we will. It's challenging. Our kids are growing up with so much more than either one of us had. What we focus on is raising really kind, good, curious humans that aren't afraid to fail and will be willing to take risks. The edge part, I think, a lot of that is to be determined, really. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm being really, I really hope, they're still young. I think if we focus on connecting them to a purpose bigger than themselves, that will give them the edge, because the edge isn't necessarily going to come from them ever being hungry.
I'll give you some
I
rap.
think that's where I would focus, is on the purpose. And we do family dinner a lot when we can. And Jesse just wanted me to mention this, but we'll talk a lot about purpose. But we want to teach our kids to be curious. So we have guests a lot at our house for dinner, and we have a rule that anytime we have a new guest at our dinner table, each kid has to ask them one question. Mm-hmm. And so the kids have now become very good at asking questions at a
Taylor's
young
been
age.
asked questions.
Yeah, they're deep. They're not what's your favorite color.
No, they're not. And so I think we do that because we're also trying to teach a child to think beyond themselves. And so now people stop by our house and Tepper will be like, what's your purpose? What's the meaning of life for you? And they're like,
Teffy.
but anyway.
I'll give you a couple real quick rapid fire. What are some key components? What would you say are some key components to long-term success?
Stay in your lane. Stay in the lane that you're best at. As entrepreneurs, a lot of times we have to be every department, and you can get pulled in other areas that is not your superpower. Hire and be constantly checking yourself at the end of each day. Did I spend the bulk of the day doing what I'm best at? And if I didn't, I'm going to burn out. I'm going to feel drained. And that's a cue that I need to hire better people around me, or I need to hire my weaknesses. So I stayed really connected to sales, marketing, and inventing. And the rest of the business, I had a conversation with Richard Branson about this. I didn't even understand half of it and still don't. Like, if you show me a P&L, and it's just like, it looks almost like Greek to me. It's, but I had people I trusted helping me there. And my dad oversaw everything for me, which also was such a blessing. But
Wasn't your dad your only board member?
my dad was the board for Spanx for 16 years. The board. So I never had a board. I never had advisors. My dad would fly in 4 times a year. And we'd talk about the business.
Hilarious.
But I talked to Richard Branson once, and he's like, right, so Sarah, I didn't know what net profit was, okay? And I'm like, yeah, I struggle with that too, Richard. And he's like, right. So somebody told me that net profit, if you were to go fishing and you caught things, everything that you is left over in the net is net profit. I was like, oh, that helps. Thank you. But like, you got a guy like Richard who's like, so he stayed in his lane is what I'm saying. Is like he continues to dream big, invent, mobilize a team around him, and he's not in the part that he doesn't fully understand. And it's not burning him out, slowing him down. So I would say that's a big answer. Plus, I bucketed my days. I got really clear about because when you're an entrepreneur, you're doing everything. And I got monkey brain and I got very scattered and I felt drained a lot. And so I took inventory of that. In one day, I'd make a decision about a bra. Then I'd go right into a legal meeting. Then I'd go right into a meeting about an HR issue with some employee. Then I'd go into a meeting and I was like, I didn't feel like I was making good decisions. I didn't have full context. I wasn't giving myself the opportunity for context and I was drained. At the end of the day, I just felt like I got like a bunch of arrows shot at me. So I started bucketing my days. Okay, Monday is product day. Tuesday is meet with the leaders of Spanx day. Wednesday is all brand. I'm going to discuss brand and creative with the creative team. Now that didn't end up being a perfect scenario, but by kind of having themes to my days, or at least themes to parts of my days, I got a lot better and felt less drained at making good decisions. Been looking at this one version of success that not everybody, especially women, have felt like they could relate to. And I wanted to be joyful about it as much as I could. And I remember when I started Spanx, I was like, why is everyone acting so serious? Do we have to do it this way? And, I don't subscribe to that you have to act serious to be taken seriously. It's like, who made that up? Like, let's mix this up. We're only on this planet. We just saw this cool thing happen today for a short period of time. We don't even know why we're all here. We're literally on a rock hurling through space right now. The heck. So we might as well have fun and enjoy it. And I also think that one of the things that I did along the way is I made things fun. Like I would turn almost everything into a game. So if you mobilize people that way by making things fun. But thank you.